Welcome. My name is Alexander, and this is Season, a letter to the future. I have a scoop this time. This game came out on Steam only a month ago as of this posting. I found its pre-release page looking for games similar to Heaven's Vault, whose story, world, and characters still have a firm grip on my memory. Season begins in Caro, an isolated mountain village. A young woman tells of a prophetic dream had by her best friend that has been interpreted to mean the world is about to undergo the end of a season. It's pretty clear from the outset that this isn't just the change from summer to autumn, but something more apocalyptic.
And suddenly, the apple is rotten. It looks like it's full of spiders.
Yeah, that can't be good. Our heroine feels called by this to leave her village and see the world before the change happens, and to document things as they are. I could immediately see the resemblance between this and Heaven's Vault in the travel and investigation mechanics. As someone in a similar line of work, I was delighted that the destination our heroine strikes out for is a legendary museum at the end of the world, where she can deposit her findings. Whereas Aaliyah had a ship, an ancient dictionary, and a robot, here we have a bicycle, a sketchbook, a tape recorder, and a camera. And rather than reconstruct the past, here we're trying to preserve the present, more like an archivist than an archaeologist.
Statement of Carlos Saviteri regarding his arachnophobia and its manifestations. Original statement given April 9th, 2015. Audio recording by Jonathan Sims, head archivist of the Magnus Institute.
No, we're not doing that. As a semi-regular cyclist myself, I enjoy bicycle riding as a travel mechanic, although I keep wanting to tell the main character to put on a helmet. Mind you, like Aaliyah's Nightingale, you can't crash. At worst, you get brought to an abrupt halt, or maybe get snagged on the landscape. Once the village introduces us to the controls, we hop on that bike and explore the hinterland of Caro Village, the ruins of highways, and primarily a lush valley in the shadow of an ancient dam. The environments and art style are gorgeous. The fact that you're invited to document them in photographs and sound recordings really clicks for me, as it's exactly what I do when I travel. If you document particular sites, you'll get a comment from the main character.
Music from a trio of performers. The metal, the breeze, and my mind.
A little reward for having a keen eye, and it fleshes out the world building a bit. Actually, anything you document counts for something. For every location given space in our character's scrapbook here, you can build up keepsakes like photos, sounds, and found items until you gain an inspiration.
A village that was created as a place to heal. Is that where my instinct to try to help comes from?
There's more than enough to find that will add up to a complete page, so you mostly don't have to scour the environments for specific things. Even when you do, the main environment, the Tiang Valley, isn't so huge that it's a pain to do a sweep of it to find out what you missed. It's kind of liberating after the amount of rummaging Siberia games make me do. On the downside, there's little or no difference in the value of a random photo and things the game intended for you to collect. You could probably complete a section of the map just by pointing your camera at anything and get an inspiration from 6 photos of a wall. I'm not even sure what the inspirations are meant to achieve. Heaven's Vault at its worst gave you some make-work translations or led you down a dialogue dead end, but even those added color to the world. But your only reward for inspirations are an area checked off on the objectives and a vaguely poetic makes you think comment from our main character, some of which are poetic enough.
There isn't enough room for a cemetery in my village. Here, memory is granted space. Land is used to let the living meet the dead.
But many more, frankly, don't make any sense to me at all.
God is always stopping to tie his shoe. He bends over and his eyes go completely white for like 60 minutes. But he doesn't tie a single lace.
What? Well, in fairness, it's pretty clear what the objective of the game is, to go looking around and record the society of the Tiang Valley. This is definitely where the Heaven's Vault comparison is strongest.
This structure doesn't have a use like the ones in my village. I think it's supposed to make you feel something, or to have a place to think.
See, that's archaeology talk. Especially when you have to identify the valley's gods and their roles. This one is the easiest. I mean, look at it, it's clearly a Triceratops. I did notice that this game isn't quite as smart as Heaven's Vault, in that it doesn't seem to change much depending on what order you see things. For example, the god statues have these little prayer slips left by worshippers. After collecting a couple, I reached a shrine and found a station with blank slips and pencils, and get this.
This must be for writing something. But what?
I know what. I just picked one up. So the programming's a little less thoughtful. The main character doesn't just talk to herself. Her mother sees her off at the start, and she has flashbacks to conversations with the village elder and her friend who had the dream. There are a few people still in the valley, including an officer of the Grey Hands, who seem a bit like a Peace Corps, a retired artist, a widow and her young son, the hippie monk who runs the valley shrine, and you listen to some of the regional radio broadcasts. The character design is kind of quirky. Our main character, her mother, and the mother and child in the valley are all fairly realistic looking, and a woman of color at the forefront is always good to see. And then there's characters like the artist or your friend with the dream who look like Studio Ghibli characters, and this guy on the beach later in the game doesn't even look human. Bit like a Warcraft troll, come to think of it. I enjoy the presence of voice acting. I also thought it was a good idea for the main character to eventually meet someone whose language she doesn't speak. I find it sort of puzzling that the game starts with this message about the diversity of the development team. Assassin's Creed is probably the best known game to do this, what with it being set in a time of interfaith warfare. Season has lots of diverse characters, but I don't see any stereotypes I recognize. There's no expression of bigotry or violence. The cast is diverse because there's no good reason for it not to be, and I don't understand why they feel it needs to justify that. I suppose the Grey Hand officer's character design is a little odd. I keep thinking he looks like one of those anti-Japanese caricatures like in Tintin. Then there's the troll guy, but he's not human-looking enough to be a caricature, and I don't think he acts in a way that implies anything negative. You may have noticed by now that our main character here has no name. She's just kind of a cipher, which seems like a waste. Maybe I'm being unfair, since I set out hoping for another Heaven's Vault, and I really liked exploring Aaliyah's character, but they might as well have made the game first person for all the characterization she gets. She mentions losing her father at a few points, but the story doesn't seem to do anything with that. It's not clear what a season change is or what causes it. There's a lot of implications that memory is impacted in some way.
You think everyone makes it into a new season intact?
There's clearly a sort of magic in this game to do with evoking memory, reminiscent of the novel The Giver by Lois Lowry. The first objective is to make a memory amulet to protect yourself from getting overwhelmed by other people's memories. There's a lot of references to people suffering from magic diseases having to do with getting lost in too many memories. Didn't really get this part. Is too much memory bad? Is forgetting good? If that's the case, why are we recording things? But sometimes it sounds more like they're just profound shakeups like wars or disasters.
The war was its own season.
The ruins and the cultural mix and match certainly evoke a Myst-like vibe that you're post-multiple apocalypses, with another one potentially on the way.
Trying to imagine this place full of tourists, bustling with fumes, automobiles growling for territory.
See, Tiang Valley is so sparsely populated because the dam is decaying, so the Grey Hands are going to do a controlled demolition. Meanwhile, they're evacuating everyone to a wonderful place called the Radiant City. You find a bunch of posters and a promotional film reel with an intensely creepy sing-along about how much better everything will be.
Tear down the ruin in your mind, the wound you kept inside, can you let it go?
You find graffiti left by someone who appears to think the Grey Hands are lying to blow up the dam for their own reasons, and the dig site where they're digging up and studying memory-affecting crystals is laced with implications that they're hoarding or weaponizing them in some way.
I was worried for nothing. Everything is lost in a flood.
Not to mention the farm animals that the inhabitants have been forced to leave to their deaths in the flood.
The name of this cow is TVC-15, oh my.
Everything about this is setting off alarm bells that we're about to uncover an evil plan to foil. The main character even implies as much.
The Grey Hands present one side to the public, and another is hidden behind metal fences. There is no one to oppose them.
Then you get into the shrine, and you get the monk to help evacuate the last few inhabitants, and they get put on a truck and driven away. I mean, this looks like the moment where you realize that they're actually being shipped off to a radioactive labor camp or something. But no, apparently this is all fine. Did the developers somehow not notice how many red flags they built into this? Don't get me wrong, I wasn't expecting the game to turn into an action shooter all of a sudden, but this felt like the moment in Siberia where the Soviet factory foreman shows his true colors and you have to get yourself and your companions out of there. I think it's a proven thread of storytelling that when the main activity is recording or documenting the world, eventually you're going to have to use what's been learned to change or save the world. It's the concept that underlies Heaven's Vault, Myst, and Siberia in a way. I threw in that clip from the Magnus archives at the beginning because it's also a major element of that podcast. Look, I always try not to slide into how I would have written it tirades, nor do I want to sound like an edgy type who thinks being abstract or postmodernist or whatever buzzwords are an existential threat to art or something. It just comes across to me like the creators wanted so much to do something different and profound with the video game medium that they ended up doing nothing at all. After we move on to the beach, we turn on a lighting array that apparently alerts people to a season change, then hitch a lift with our troll friend on his boat across the sea, witness something that might be the end of the season, and then the game ends. We really only visited one place. The game implied we'd be going to at least 2 or 3. What about the museum? Of all the questions our heroine sets herself at the beginning of the game,
What is this season that is about to end? And why is it ending? What exactly is out there that could turn the world inside out?
none of them are answered by the end. There's a fine line between stories like Myst or Heaven's Vault leaving space for your imagination to fill in, and stories like this or Siberia 3, which just feel like the creators forgot to put in several parts of it. I don't want to dismiss this game. It's Canadian, it's gorgeous, the level design is lavish and believable without being a functional labyrinth. The game mechanics are fun and well implemented. It has a woman of color protagonist. I enjoy the premise of a post-apocalyptic landscape that's actually quite nice. And there are a few choices offered that made me think I haven't seen every bit of the game. Overall, though, all these very promising parts aren't tied together in a meaningful or fulfilling way. Myst, Siberia, and Heaven's Vault are the kind of gaming experience I've been chasing my whole life, and sad to say that Season: A Letter to the Future doesn't quite make the cut. But the search is a worthy one, and I wouldn't be surprised if this developer gets there in the future. For now, thank you for watching.
Tear